I think just to get us started, I think it'll really help for people to learn about how Mu Sigma started, how you and Dheeraj started Mu Sigma, and some of the early days. So tell us about the stories, that some of which that I know, but I think the audience would be well served to hear about them.
Sure. So by the way, this morning as I was leaving home, my son gave me some advice for this session. And he said, based on my classroom experience, Mom, I have to give you some advice. I said, okay, what is it? He said, if you get asked a tough question, just say confidently that I'll get back to you on that. And you know what will happen? They will never come back to you with that question and you're home free. So here's some unsolicited advice for all the speakers out there. So going back to our story, right? It started in 2004. My husband at that time was a management consultant at Buzal and Hamilton. And he was working with an insurance company as his client at that time, trying to help them with various strategy. Global outsourcing was one of the things that he was working on at that time. And completely unrelated to that, he was working with the head of analytics at the insurance company. And one of the things that he realized at that time was there was a serious challenge in terms of companies dealing with lots and lots of data that they had collected over the years and trying to make sense out of all of that. And there was a serious shortage of talent as well as processes and technological platforms that one could use to make sense of all that data that they had collected within their firewalls, outside their firewalls, and so on. And Dheeraj had identified that as a problem, and at that time, and we come from a very middle-class family, and entrepreneurship was not in our dreams at all at that time. So he wrote a nice white paper and shared it with Buzal and Hamilton and his partner at that time, and he actually got an award. I still have the award at home. And they said, hey, this is nice, very nice idea, and they published the paper in their internal platforms, and they left it at that. And said that we cannot really start a new business line based on that idea. But it kept going in Dheeraj's head, saying, how can I let it go? This seems like an interesting idea. And a few months later, we kept talking about it and said, I'm going to go do it myself. And he went and reached out to his partner and said, I think I'm going to go try this out myself. And his partner said, okay, but here is a 28-year-old wanting to try this out, and said, if it doesn't work out, come back in 3 months, right, and you can have your job back. So that was a sense of relief. But he left the job, started the company, reached out to different people through his business school connections, his professors, and so on and so forth. And for about 8 months, I remember him just sitting in the den and trying to draw out various aspects of the company, creating lots of presentations, talking to different people, and we didn't have any customer for the first 8 months. And that insurance company which he had worked with, the head of analytics at that time, had said that if you were to ever start a company to tackle this problem, I'll be your first customer. So he was really banking on that customer to become to client at some point. So he kept in touch and all of that. And 8 months later, that company was launching an RFP to see if they can find a partner to help them with analytics. And it so happened that the news came to him, and by then, Dheeraj had gotten into some trouble with his wisdom teeth, and he had gone to the doctor, and the doctor said, I have to get rid of your wisdom teeth, and all 4 of them. He said, I don't have time for doing one at a time. Just go ahead and take all of them out, okay? And so the surgery happened, and the next day, as he was recovering from it, the client, the customer from that insurance company called him. The procurement team calls and says, can we have a lunch meeting? And he's swollen, and he's with a cotton inside his mouth and taking pain relievers and so on, and he didn't know what to do. He said, but I can't miss this meeting. So he went ahead to the lunch meeting, looking all swollen. And once he reached there, he realized that the team wanted to tell him that, hey, we're a large company, we're Fortune, one of the largest publicly traded insurance companies in the U.S., and said, you're a no-name company, you have no credibility yet, and I can't put you through the RFP process. And that's what they wanted to say, But turns out they didn't have the heart to say. See, looking at him with his swollen face, and they decided to include him in the RFP. And then what happened was somehow there were 3 companies competing for working on different business problems, and it was a 2-month engagement to showcase what we're capable of, and it turns out that we won that RFP. And they're still a customer of ours, and we've grown well with them. So very indebted to what that company has done for us. So that's how we got started.
Yeah, very inspiring for me, certainly. And Ambika, so Dheeraj and you have some, and I'm going to just quickly chat about 3 or 4 main topics.
Sure.
I'd love to chat a little bit about how you guys have thought about Mu Sigma, the cultures and the values for Mu Sigma, right. Differently from most other guys.
Right. So we as a company believe that we are not in the business of helping our customers solve specific business problems, but rather we are in the business of building a better art for problem solving. And we look at our model of delivery out of India more as an innovation play rather than a cost play. How do you help customers experiment? How do you help customers develop innovation as a strength within their organizations? Now, to achieve that, there are certain key qualities that our teams need to have. And I'll just touch upon one of them in the interest of time, and that is learning over knowing. And learning as a trait that came up in your earlier presentation as well. We look at learning as d by dt of knowledge. Yeah, we'd like to use equations for everything. So learning is something that is, it's a continuous process, right? And internally we joke by saying that one needs to have a leaky bucket. You can't have your bucket full. If it doesn't leak, you can't pour more into it, right? So you need to have a leaky bucket. So that you can keep adding more knowledge to your bucket. So it's a process of unlearning things that you have learned before and ability to learn new things in an agile manner. So that's a key trait that we have built into the company. Now, in order to enable that, there are some surrounding traits that you need to have. For example, how to be more direct, how to build curiosity in the team so that they can freely ask questions. So one of the things that you pointed out earlier was, awarding the best question of the month. The reason being, if people don't ask good questions, the answers are irrelevant, right? And answers can change over a period of time, but how do you encourage young people out of India to ask better questions? So that's kind of the culture that, we've been focused on, and it's not been easy. But it keeps me awake at times as we're growing. But I think it's a very interesting challenge.
Yeah, and now, Ambika, you run the operation for Mu Sigma, right? There are a few thousand people now that you sort of have to oversee, and many of these are very young people. They're in their early 20s when you hire them. How are you going to deal with the challenge of the most important challenge for any company growing at your pace and with your success is how are you going to keep the culture intact as you become a big company? So talk a little about what you guys are doing.
Yeah. So number of things. There is no one magic bullet, clearly. It's a lot of hard work. For example, every month, a group of us, the senior leadership, and 30-40 people across different levels, we go off to Nandi Hills. Just sit under a tree, talk about various aspects of the company, how to inculcate, the key values into our young members of the company, right? So there's a lot of talking involved, right? Yeah. And allowing them to ask questions. Why do you do certain things this way? This doesn't seem intuitive, and so on and so forth. So the ability to answer those authentically, right? So there's a lot of work around that. And secondly, the very first thing that we say when people join us into the company is on the very first day, as part of the orientation, is if you say sir or madam in the company, you have to stand up on the bench, because if you're going to behave like children, we'll treat you like children, right? And we've literally done that. So it starts with that, some of the basics, right? And that is hard to break in India, and I have seen it many times that a person will say that 4 or 5 times before they can stop saying sir or madam, right? So it starts with that. How do you break the idea of hierarchy within the company? How do you enable people to give direct feedback? For example, an incident that happened last week. So we're starting a new initiative, and we created a team of people last month, myself and a couple of my direct reports and a few analysts and so on. And the idea was to share what we're doing in the initiative, the why, how, and all of that with the rest of the company, right? So I was supposed to present to small groups of people the same presentation. I had done it 3 times. 4th time, my son fell sick, and last minute I couldn't go to the presentation. And so I had asked one of my delivery leaders, my direct report, to go do the presentation. And that afternoon, I caught up with a few people in the hallway and said, hey, how did the presentation go? And one of them actually told me that, you know what, compared to your last presentation, this one went better. My direct report did a better job of presenting. And immediately I thought, how could that be? Maybe, he saw all 3 of my presentations. Maybe he learned from that. Maybe, the people already knew the context and so on. My head was churning in that manner. But once I was able to clear out those thoughts, I realized that it was a beautiful moment. It was a time when a young analyst in the company is able to come and tell me that I didn't do a good job, right? Very direct feedback, and we had enabled that as a culture in the company. And I think, moments like that definitely keep me going.
Yeah, I have a story of my...
Thank you.
I have a story of my own when we were considering investing in Mu Sigma. I think this is late 2010 story or some point in 2010. Ambika and Dheeraj invited how many of your team members, 20 plus of your team members, to a conference room to ask us questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they said, hey, we are considering partnering with Sequoia Capital, and, my team has questions for you.
Yeah.
And can you guys be available for a few hours to answer questions? I was like, sure, we'll do that. So we were grilled by a team of senior team members from Mu Sigma for, 2+ hours?
Yeah, for 2+ hours.
And people ask all kinds of questions, like, how do you guys operate? What do you do? Will you really help the company? Will anything change after you become on the board? What have you done in your past? What have you personally done before? Like, there was all kinds of questions, and they were all welcome. And it is the most interesting interaction I have had with the broader team, a 20-member team, before making an investment. And I think it was representative of the kind of open and transparent culture that Mu Sigma has.
And similar is the case when customers come to our offices. And you'll find senior vice presidents and directors and so on of large companies coming over, and we made it a point that they will not stay in the boardroom during their entire visit. We go into the boardroom, spend 10 minutes talking about the agenda, and the rest of the time they're outside on the floor talking to real people that are doing the work, talking to the young analysts who can talk about the work passionately, so that there is authenticity in their visit to the company, and it is not it's not a show that we're putting on. So I think it's. In one case, we had a senior person from Walmart who had visited us, and the lady who was wearing high heels. And by afternoon, she said, "Is this a new thing? Why are you making me walk so much?" Right? And so we had to take care of that. So in general, it's about exposing young people in the company to things that will enable them to step up and take ownership of their work. And it is not just building the culture within the company for our team members, but also getting our investors to understand what we are all about, and also our customers to experience the culture.
Yeah, no, I can certainly attest to that. Talk also about how you guys sell, because the context for those of you who don't know how Mu Sigma evolved is that Mu Sigma started after many other competitors, but it has by far become the largest decision science company on the planet, and it's still growing rapidly. And most other people could not scale analytics. And Ambika, you and Dheeraj have heard this question over the years: does analytics scale? And you guys have demonstrated how to scale analytics. And one element of that is how you deal with customers and how you sell. Yeah. Right? Talk about how many people there are in the sales team and what it is comprised of, and how you guys sell to customers.
Yeah, so we have about 15 people in the sales team. For the first, I would say 5 years, it was only 2 people, and one of them was Dheeraj. And so in the last 3 years or so, we have, we've grown the sales team to about 14 people, and it is comprised of 3 people in the United States who have maybe an overall years of, 10 years of experience, but 0 sales experience. And the rest of the team is based out of Bangalore. And the average age of that team is 22. 0 sales experience and little bit of experience in Musigma in terms of how we deliver to our customers. And when we first started building out the sales team, like most companies, we had also hired experienced salespeople based out of the US who knew how to engage with customers, who had their own style and things like that, but that didn't work out. Unfortunately, we had to let most of them go after a year because we didn't see any deals out of their efforts. And then we said, look, we're going to start this from scratch. Looks like this is one of those things where we'll apply first principles thinking and figure out how every interaction will need to happen. We thought that through. And interestingly, the 22-year-olds were much more open to learning something new, a new way of selling, than the people that had years of sales experience. And these 22-year-olds sitting out of India have been able to close some of the best Fortune companies out there as clients for us. So.
Yeah, so for us, we had never seen a company with over $100 million of revenue, with 3-4 handful of people in the US, who is on the logo of customers. I think 75 to 100 of Fortune 1000.
That's correct.
Are customers, and primarily the biggest sales engine is sitting out of India and Bangalore in the form of young people.
That's right. Yeah.
And we haven't seen that before, and certainly was eye-opening for us, and a reflection of how you have to sometimes think and do things differently, not necessarily need to do how things were done in the past or how other successful companies done it. This is an example of many things were created here for the first time.
Yeah, it is all about learning something new.
Yeah. Thank you, Amika. And talk a little about work-life balance and how you guys think about this, because Musigma is a little different from most companies in how they think about the boundaries of work and life. So give us some insights into that.
So we like to think of it as work-life integration, how to bring more life to work. There's the boundaries are a little blurred. I sometimes bring my son to office if there's no one at home to watch him. Similarly, some of my teammates do that. We talk about homeworks at times and so on. So we look at it as, how do you bring more life to work? And it is not a very clear boundary anymore. I think in a lot of companies that's going to happen, right? Where, you're looking at your BlackBerries and your iPhones all the time and so on. So we work very hard, right? And it is not possible to achieve anything if you don't have that blurring of boundaries. That's our belief.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more anecdote to that. Not only have I had to answer questions at various points in time with the management team, I also had to answer questions for Akash, who is Dheeraj and Ambika's son, 8 years old. And because there are times when Akash has accompanied Dheeraj to catching up for coffee or what have you, and Dheeraj had said, "Hey, Akash has some questions of you," and Akash would say, "Hey, what do you really do?" And so that's a little bit, again, we are trying to give you a sense of a few snippets of how companies can think about culture, and these little things can impact the fabric of a company, and how people think about building an institution for decades. And Musigma for us is certainly one of those which we think is an enduring institution. It's already been around for many years, and kudos to you, Ambika and Dheeraj, and all the management team members for having done such an incredible job. And I think in many ways, Musigma has made India proud because it's the world's largest decision sciences company.
And Dheeraj just made it to the Fortune 40 under 40 list
last week. Dheeraj was listed on the global Fortune 40 under 40. I think earlier this year he won the Entrepreneur of the Year award.
That's right.
And that's why when I went into the office and found him in Lungi in that day that I talked about, I was like, this is quite different. And hopefully you guys got a little bit of flavor for that.